this video, we're going to discuss the WorkNC dynamic stock model. So what is a stock model? A stock model is basically a digital representation of the material being milled at any point in time. For example, you may start with a solid block of material, and then after roughing it with your first cutter, your stock model may resemble what's on the screen here, and then you may re-rough it with a smaller cutter until it resembles this. One common use of the stock model is for roughing and re-roughing. Generally, you want to rough with the largest tool possible because that's the most efficient and fastest way of roughing. So we rough with our large tool, and then what we will do is update the stock model and automatically re-rough it with a smaller tool, update the stock model again, and re-rough it with a smaller tool yet until we're satisfied and are ready for semi-finishing operations. WorkNC utilizes a dynamic stock model versus a simple static stock model. Static stock models only know the condition of the material at the beginning of the cut, and they also know the condition of the material at the end of the cut once the stock model has been updated. However, it does not know the condition of the material during the cut. A dynamic stock model does know the condition of the material during the cut, so all retracts can be done in the safest manner possible. There are many advantages to using the dynamic stock model over the static stock model. Besides safety, one huge advantage is efficiency. Because of the dynamic stock model, we know where the material is and is not, and we can keep the tool engaged more often with fewer interrupted cuts. Notice, as we cut this block here, the tool stays engaged in the material on the step over without the interrupted cut, often found on other systems. What that does is it extends tool life and runs faster and more efficiently. One other benefit of the dynamic stock model is automatic holder collision avoidance. Basically, you've heard it said that you should machine with the shortest tool possible. This allows you to do that. I can rough with the tool and the holder in combination. So here is what your stock model looks like if you do not take into account the holder. And here is what your stock model looks like when you take the holder into consideration. Notice that you can use the short tool and remove over 80 or 90% of the stock and only use a longer tool or a different angle where necessary to finish roughing the part. Besides re-roughing in 3-axis down the Z-axis, we can re-rough in 3+2 axis also. Naturally, we'll start with our stock model. It can be a cylinder, as we're going to use in this case, besides a rectangle, which is kind of the default. You can also use a CAD model or STL model as your stock model, so lots of options for what the initial stock model looks like. So we're going to do a base roughing down the Z-axis, and the tool is going to fit in everywhere that it can. And then we do 3+2 axis re-roughing, and because it knows the stock model, it only creates cutter path exactly where it needs to, even getting in these areas of undercuts. Displaying the stock model from the first roughing cutter path, it looks like this, and then we can display successive updates to that stock model as we do different 3+2 axis cutter paths from one view to another angle, and to a final angle, etc., etc. Another benefit of the stock model is in what we call finish rest machining. Rest machining basically means the rest of the material, getting the material out in corners that's left over from a larger tool during a finishing operation. WorkNC was an innovator of rest milling over 2 decades ago. So basically, most systems use a reference cutter, and you'll get a result like this. The reference cutter is basically when you tell the program, this is what I previously used, find all the areas of stock left over. And it does it mathematically, and it doesn't look at the actual stock. However, we can look at the 3D stock model. And the advantage of that is because you may not finish with just one cutter. You may use multiple cutters when you finish. For example, I might do a Z-level finish with a bull nose, a ball nose somewhere else, and a near flat mill for the flats. Well, if I update the stock model and do an actual rest machining based on the actual stock and not theoretical corners, this is what my rest machining looks like. As you can see, this is considerably more efficient than the previous cutter path, and much more exact. There are multiple ways of creating your initial stock model within WorkNC. Commonly, you might use prismatic shapes, such as rectangular shapes or cylinders. Another common method is through a CAD file that can be read in and used as your stock model. This includes STL models. Or you may start with a casting and then update your stock model from your cutter paths from here. Thank you for watching our video on WorkNC's dynamic stock model. If you have any questions, feel free to visit our webpage, www.worknc.com.